Every single one of us, you and me, have it in some way. How we choose to move forward, how we choose to cope with it in healthy ways, and how we decide to move forward without letting our trauma bring us down and hold us back, that determines your future. You know, more often than not, whether we're child, teens, or young adults, we will take things that we've experienced and we will use that as an identifier and make that who we are. And I'm sorry, but I don't want to be somebody who's stuck in my past through experiences that I may have went through, and I don't want those things to define me. But all too often, we as humans let our trauma define us. And I'm here today to talk to you about my own personal experiences, what I've done, and maybe potentially it could inspire or help you work through issues and not use your trauma in negative ways that contribute negatively in your relationships, friendships, marriages, or whatever it may be. Because look, the reality is we've all experienced things that are really traumatic in our lives, some things more than others. I've never really talked about this, but just a couple years ago, I was diagnosed with complex PTSD. Okay. I was in a really bad situation. That situation led to me experiencing domestic violence and a multitude of different experiences I had never experienced. And now there are certain things that trigger me. And the biggest thing I want to come away with before we even dive into this subject is that my triggers, my trauma, are Daniel's responsibility, all right? It is not your partner, boyfriend, girlfriend's wife, husband, or whoever you are, responsibility to fix and cater to your trauma. Now, it's awesome if you have a significant other who, you know, is understanding for why you may act or be or do certain things because of your experiences. But at the end of the day, it's not their job, and they shouldn't be trying to fix you. At the end of the day, only you and I can fix us, okay? And this video may be hard for some people to hear, but I'm going to tell you about my own experiences and what I've done, and hopefully somewhere down the line you can come away watching this video and be like, wow, you know what? I got a lot more work to do. We all do. You know, the moment you and I think that we're done with our personal development and growth, no matter what subject it be, that's when we're probably going to mess up the most. Okay, because life doesn't work that way. There is no stagnate where we just stop progressing, stop growing. Life is ever moving, and as it gets boring, like I don't want to keep just staying where I am all the time in terms of my personal development and as a person and human as I get older. I just have no desire for that, and a lot's changed over the last 15 years of my life on the internet, and I like who I'm becoming currently, whereas a couple years ago I would say I did not like who I was becoming currently. But anyways, I'm getting derailed here. So trauma, right? You and I all have it in some way. What works for me may not necessarily work for you, but typically when we, as a young adult, teenager, experience traumatic experiences, we as humans cope with those traumatic experiences in a multitude of different ways. The most common being substances. Now, substances are very vague, all right? It can be anything, really. Some people do, you know, Adderall. Some people may do harder substance like snow. And I know some people will get mad when I say this, but even people use the devil's lettuce. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? I'm not shaming or condemning people who use the devil's lettuce. Where I'm trying to approach this from is that any sort of suppressant, any sort of substance, even if it's legal, that allows that, how do I word this? For example, if you, let's say anytime you get triggered massively, you go to the devil's lettuce and you do a bunch of that, right? It relaxes you, calms you. Awesome. The problem with that, as much as I support people smoking that type of particular substance, is that it doesn't fix the problem of your trigger and it doesn't deal with the trauma that you're currently experiencing. Okay. It's a suppressant. It makes us feel good. It's just a substitute for a problem that we haven't resolved, that we don't want to deal with. Now, some people use alcohol, right? Some people use the devil's lettuce. Some people use harder substances. Some people go off the deep end. Some people go manic and become chaotic and self-sabotage. Sometimes it's not even substances. It's just how they deal with people and relationships. That's their form of sabotage when they experience a trauma or a trigger, right? And this is a very vague thing that I'm talking about here. People do all sorts of different things to cope with their trauma. And today, what I want to talk about is how you can manifest those negative emotions, those experiences, and put them in a pathway that is healthy. Now, that's going to be different for almost every single person. I am not a professional in terms of, I don't know what type of, there's different forms of therapy for different types of issues. And I don't know what you have, and I'm not going to tell you, you need this. For me, it's different, right? Because I have PTSD. I was diagnosed with PTSD. I've never even talked about me being diagnosed with PTSD a couple of years ago because I was in a very, very bad situation, which led to me experiencing domestic violence. Okay. It messed me up. Now, one of the things that I did after I experienced said trauma and went through horrific forms of physical and verbal abuse, is I resorted to then going into a new relationship. And in that new relationship, I took a lot of my issues, and this is so common. I want to tell you, this is so common that you and I do. People do this all the time. And it's important that we recognize how we affect other people, because if we go into a new relationship, friendship, marriage, without our trauma, without healthy coping mechanisms for our trauma, all we're going to do is we're going to take all of our issues, all of our trauma, and we're going to subjugate our partner to our trauma. That could, and most likely, it usually manifests in the form of projection, or we make our trauma our partner, girlfriend, boyfriend, significant other's responsibility. And oh my God, let me tell you something. My issues, what I've experienced, what you've experienced, is not your husband's, wife, boyfriend, or girlfriend's responsibility. Now, if you have a partner who's understanding and is willing to help you go through the proper steps to get healthier, to go through your issues, that's awesome. But you and I need to deal with our problems. We cannot expect our partners to fix it. And all too often, people with a lot of trauma go into new relationships expecting or using their significant other as a form or a crutch in order to resolve, fix, or comfort them for their unresolved issues. And that's not their responsibility. And it's unfair for you or I to place that on any other person other than ourselves. You want to know one of the biggest factors of failing relationships? It's not the fact that they're monogamous or poly or this or that. The majority of it is people have severe issues that are unresolved. And people take those unresolved issues and then put it into their new relationship. And that then becomes the new other person's responsibility indirectly, or they feel like it's their responsibility, or I or you make it their responsibility. And then it's this never-ending perpetual cycle where you're not getting the help that you actually need for healthy coping mechanisms. Instead, it's your significant other. And that's not fair to your partner. That's not fair to your husband or wife. Now, their alternative is therapy, obviously. And therapy is very beneficial, but also I understand that therapy is not always easily accessible to people. At least here in America, therapy is pretty expensive. If you don't have insurance, it's like $200 per session. And I understand that there are factors with that you may not be able to do because you don't have the money for it. And if that's the case, then I'm sorry, that is super sucky. And there's not a lot I can do in those types of situations, except you can do your part and find different alternatives to substitute for your unhealthy coping mechanisms. And what do I mean by this? Well, look, when we have trauma, right? More often than not, we substitute trauma to suppress it in some way. And that can be, this is very vague when I say substances, but we use the devil's lettuce, maybe snow, maybe abusing pills, maybe drinking alcohol. Some people our trauma manifests in different ways on what we do to cope with it. One of the things that I did, I'll give you an example because using myself as an example is the best way that I can explain this. End of 2022 to 2023, end of 2022 into around middle of 2023. I was involved in a big legal battle. If you know, you know. I'm not going to talk about it. I can't legally because there was a settlement, blah, 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 blah. But it was very public on this YouTube channel, if you know what I'm referencing. And in this legal situation that I was involved with, I was nonstop, consistently being triggered over and over and over and over, almost some days daily and sometimes weekly in the situation. I couldn't get out of this situation because of what was being done to me through the legal process. And it was the most stressful, crazy time of one of the most crazy, not the most stressful, but it was a situation where my trauma, I couldn't get ahead of my experience. Even through therapy, I couldn't get ahead of it because it was ongoing constantly. What I was experiencing was constant. I was being harassed constantly. I was being contacted in ways that I didn't want to be contacted by. I couldn't escape what I was experiencing because it was also involving the legal system. Now, some people resort to substances. I resorted to detaching my brain through video gaming, which, if you don't know, I'm a big video gamer. I still am. But I remember the end of 2022 to maybe around, I think it was just before summer of 2023, I was using video games as my emotional crutch. I was using it as a way to almost like disassociate with what I was going through. And along with that disassociation, along with me being triggered all the time, almost every week, and crazy legal stuff happening, and me not being able to get away from what was happening, right? I use video games to just detach myself. But the problem with doing that is that during that time, even though I was in therapy, I was also, I would say, I'm trying to figure out how to word this. I was emotionally neglectful. That's the best way I can say it. I wasn't there for people emotionally in the ways that I needed to be. And I remember having a sit-down conversation with my partner at the time. They brought this up to me, and I'm like, wow, you know what? You're absolutely right. And I went right down to town to fixing that and really prioritizing, like, you know what? I can't keep using video games as this as a coping mechanism to deal with things, because now I'm neglecting other things and responsibilities that I have that need to be dealt with first before video games, right? And again, people do this all the time, right? Sometimes it's not video games. Sometimes it's drinking. Sometimes it's going manic. Sometimes it's self-sabotaging. Sometimes it's self-harming. Sometimes it just manifests in so many different forms that I can't talk about them all, right? When you or I are massively triggered from trauma, there are some things that we can do to help regulate our emotions and our trigger effectively, okay? This may work for some, it may not work for others, but like typically this is what therapists will walk you through in terms of, how do I word this? You're prioritizing self-regulation and safety for yourself, because when you're triggered, you don't usually feel safe, but there are techniques that you can learn that can help you manage that trigger in healthy ways rather than the typical substances. The first thing when we're triggered, and this is really hard for a lot of people to do, but pause, stop, think, okay? Take a few minutes to step back from whatever situation's making you triggered and think. Pause. Because typically we are very reactive when we are triggered by something. We react. There's a phrase that my therapist used, I think it was called name it to tame it, all right? So basically when we are triggered, we sit back and we examine and name and think about, why are we triggered by this? Now, one of my personal triggers, okay, is door slamming. Door slamming literally makes me jump. And when door slamming would occur, even in just a natural household that had nothing to do with me, I would literally, my brain would start thinking like, what did I do wrong? I did something wrong. They're mad at me. What's going on? Are they going to run into the room and hit me, right? Like, those are real thoughts. Even if just hearing a door slam, that was the thing that I would deal with And it was really frustrating where I would almost go in like this panic sensation of like my brain would think I'm in danger. But by saying to yourself, I'm being triggered by this door slamming, you're recognizing what is causing you to feel this particular way, which in essence can actually become quite soothing rather than your brain just, jumping all around saying, this is why this is happening. This is why I'm in danger, blah, 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 blah. You're recognizing this is why my trigger happening right now. This trigger that's happening is not making me feel threatened or in danger because I'm not in danger. Am I in danger right now? Is somebody attacking me? Is me hearing the door slam, even though there's nobody after me, is that an actual physical threat to me? My brain may process it that way, but I'm sitting here grounded, pausing, thinking about, and recognizing my self-regulation here. No. The answer is no. We have this thing in our brain, our body, called the amygdala, all right? It's our sense of danger, right? When we're triggered, this sense of danger, our amygdala just gets activated and our brain goes all these which ways. But one of the ways that you can recalibrate your amygdala and your danger is, and I know this is so cheesy when I say this, but breathing techniques work, okay? They work. They just do. And they're not going to work for everybody depending on like how severe your trauma is. But for me, when I'm like my brain's going all over, I stop, I think, I recite what is triggering me, and then I breathe slowly with deep breaths. Also, another thing is, and this is so cheesy, but it worked for me, is things that calm or relax you, right? For me, I sometimes visualize myself in a different place that is calming to me. And believe it or not, this is outside the world of reality, but I typically imagine myself in the Shire from Lord of the Rings, or what's the planet in Star Wars? Dantooine is a planet in Star Wars that I like to visualize. I'm out in the fields and the grass. I know that is so stupid, but like it is a peaceful thing. Like Star Wars is a thing that brings me a lot of comfort, right? So, and Lord of the Rings. So I like to not think that I'm in reality sometimes, and by visualizing myself in the Shire with Frodo and everybody and eating some sausages. This is so stupid, I know, but like what, I don't know. Visualize yourself in put yourself in a place that in some environment that calms you. Or in my other particular cases, one of the things that I would do when I was really upset is I would instantly get up, I'd get a cup, I'd fill it with milk, some honey, and I'd put it in the microwave, and I would drink a cup of milk and honey, and it would relax me and calm me. Okay, I don't know what things calm you specifically, these types of methods, but they allow me to manifest this type of triggered energy into something that calms me, and that's really important that you find what that is for you. I don't know what that is for you. Another thing that I was taught to use is coping mechanisms in terms of saying statements to myself. So when I'm triggered, similar to like asking yourself questions like, why am I being triggered here? Am I in danger? It's also talking to yourself saying like, I can get through this. I'm going to be okay. I'm overreacting. My biggest thing is I say to myself all the time, I am completely overthinking this, which I have. I'm an overthinker a lot in a lot of situations. I overthink, and then when I overthink, then I hyperfixate on that overthinking, and then I go in this like loop, right? And it's just, oh God. Another thing that I do that helps soothe me is getting up and moving around. Some people use exercise or whatever, but like if I'm really triggered or something, I will actually get up and start, or if I have crazy anxiety, I'll start walking around like in a patterning pace, right? And that helps me so much. It allows me to calm myself moving around. I mean, it gets my blood flowing when I'm walking around, but it just allows me to decompress essentially with whatever I'm experiencing. And believe it or not, when you are able to just, when you know that you're being triggered, when you feel that internal shift in your body, that's actually good that you can acknowledge that and see that, because a lot of people can't. Some people refuse to. Some people don't even want to because of the way that sometimes being triggered makes them feel. Being able to pinpoint why you're feeling the way, what's causing it, is actually immense progress to your daily, whatever you're experiencing of trauma. That's a big deal. And if you are already there, congratulations. That's the first step in like being able to grasp this trauma, these triggers, and putting a thumb down on it and not letting it take over your life and make it your identity. Another thing that I do personally is I write a lot. I write on a little journal. This does not work for everybody, but typically if I'm super, super stressed, I've always liked handwriting my thoughts and feelings on just whatever. And that helps comfort me. And then I can go back and read that on like what I wrote down. And it helps me to self-reflect more on like, why did I feel this way? Why did I react this way? It requires a lot of self-reflection, managing these types of triggers and trauma. And I know that a lot of self-reflection is not something that is necessarily comfortable when you think about it. And in a lot of instances, we feel really stupid that we have this sort of reaction or feeling towards a certain way that we react, but know that that's part of the process, okay? And then you're not a bad person for feeling triggered or feeling anxiety or feeling overcome by a trauma response. How we react to our trauma and what we do with that trauma, that's the determining factor whether it's good or bad or not, whether it's healthy or not. Try to be as non-judgmental towards your own feelings as possible. And I'm a bit of a hypocrite for saying what I'm about to say, but I don't care because I'm going to say it anyway. Be gentle with yourself, okay? I'm not gentle with myself at all. I am like my inner worst critic. They always say that you're inner worst critic. We criticize ourselves more often. I'm always in my head thinking like, I failed this. I could be better. I'm not gentle with myself yet. I'm telling people, be gentle, okay? Wow. Going back with the exercise thing, going on a walk is also really beneficial. My cat is like, pew, pew, he's going ninja right now. Going on a walk is also really helpful to deal with stress and triggers and trauma. It's just getting out in nature, getting out of wherever you're at in that moment. If you can do it, it will help. It will benefit you. You may not think about it will, but once you're outside walking around, it absolutely will. But obviously the therapy is what I would always recommend. You got to figure out there's different types of therapy, and I can't tell you what that is. I'm not going to tell you what that is because there's different forms. You got to look that up for yourself. But I hope these methods that I've expressed here could help benefit you and help you in your daily life because they help me. And that's the only that's the really only reason I'm making this is to benefit you if you're watching. Also, a couple of videos ago, I said that I was giving away this Journey Together Elite Trainer Box. Woohoo! Well, it just so happens that I did the draw. I basically told people that if they support the sponsor of the channel, which is Vance Global, and use my code at checkout, Repzion, and send me a receipt to my email, I'll put you in a draw for my Elite Trainer Box Journey Together. And well, it's been a week, and I have a winner. So I only had 6 entries, and we're gonna roll it right now just to see who gets it. We have Jennifer P. Jennifer P. Congratulations, you have won my Pokemon Journey Together Elite Trainer Box. So I will be emailing you very right after this video goes up. Check your email. And because I got 6 entries, I'm going to do this again because I have too much Pokemon. Seriously, I have way too much Pokemon. So just like last time, if you support the channel, if you support the channel sponsor, which is Vance Global, it's the very first link in this description. Click the Vance Global link, use code Repzion at checkout. You're going to get 20% off all orders. They specialize in CBD products. They specialize in a variety of different biodegradable products for relaxation. If you can't have certain things in your body, try their CBD products because they're really good. They're all lab tested too. So on their site, they got the lab tests of all the chemicals. There's no additives. There's no chemicals. They're made of all natural ingredients. But I think the biggest thing all is if you use my code Repzion, you get 20% off, free shipping, and they ship to all 50 states directly to your door. And this is the only sponsor really that I'll make money through YouTube now is through my sponsors. So if you would like to support the sponsor, I'm doing another giveaway because I have too many of these. I actually have 8 of these that I've all purchased at retail price, but I know this is very high demand. I'm going to give it 2 weeks this time, but I have here a Pokemon Center, okay? This is not your generic Elite Trainer box. This is a Pokemon Center Elite Trainer box that one of you guys will win if you support the sponsor of the channel. So all you got to do, go to Vance Global, use code Repsion at checkout, and then send me a receipt, title it Pokemon Entry. And in 2 weeks, I will do a giveaway to one lucky person. And just like last time, I only had 6 people who entered. So the chance of winning one of these, you know, my loss is your gain. I have enough of these already. I figured I might as well just start giving some of my Pokemon stuff away because, yeah, why not, right? I have so much. Your loss is my gain. So support the sponsor of the channel today. Check out Vance Global. I will see you guys next in a couple of days for another video. And I hope this video was beneficial and helpful in some way. And I will see you guys later. Peace.